today we're talking about the sovereignty and security of Canada's Arctic. Canada is one of 8 Arctic nations that makes up the Arctic Council, and we claim sovereignty over the upper regions of North America, along with the related archipelago. Canada has more Arctic landmass than any other country, but one of the smallest Arctic populations. Our Arctic includes parts of the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, the Yukon, as well as some parts of Newfoundland and Labrador, and some parts of northern Quebec. However, there's some legal dispute over Canada's claims of sovereignty in the Arctic, and this dispute has created security issues for our country. Here today to talk about Canada's Arctic sovereignty and security are 3 experts. Tom Axworthy is the Public Policy Chair at Massey College. Professor Whitney Lackenbauer is the Canada Research Chair in the Study of the Canadian North and professor at Trent University. And Rob Hubert teaches advanced studies in Canadian Arctic security at the University of Calgary. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Robert, let's get back to basics. What are the main points of contention over Canada's claims to the Arctic?
The major one, and the one that gets the most attention, is, of course, over the status of the waterways of the Northwest Passage. Canada claims that they are internal waters, which means that Canada has complete control, the way they would have, say, over Lake Winnipeg or Great Slave Lake or any of the other lakes. In other words, Canadian laws are made by Canadian political leadership, and we can basically say and do what we want within that context. The international community, led by the Americans and followed by the British, Singaporeans, and the Germans, take the position that it's an international waterway, which means that as long as ships are following international rules, that they do not have to ask Canadian permission. And so that, in effect, is the major sovereignty issue. There's other side issues that can be considered sovereignty, but when people say sovereignty, it's about the Northwest Passage.
So, Tom, what are some of those side issues when we're talking about sovereignty?
Well, in addition to the Northwest Passage, which Rob had said that's the centerpiece. But we, again, with the United States bilaterally, there are issues on the delineation of the Beaufort Sea, who owns what there, and there are some possibilities of hydrocarbon. Hans Island on the other side of the coast with Denmark and Greenland is right smack in the middle of the 2 legal sovereignties. So we've had discussions for years about whether Hans Island should become a condominium or like Solomon, divided in half. And then lastly, Canada has overlapping claims in the law of the sea, where there is recognition of economic zones. But if you can show that the mountains under the Arctic Ocean are part of your geography, you get additional nautical miles, some considerable, 200 to 300, to add to your store. And that is being evaluated by a scientific committee under the law of the sea. But Russia, Canada, and Denmark/Greenland have overlapping claims on the same territory. We say the mountain ridge comes from Ellesmere Island. The Danes say it comes from Greenland, and the Russians say it comes down from Siberia. So, in fact, there are 4 or 5 sovereignty issues around the Arctic, but Rob's right. It's the Northwest Passage that everyone focuses on.
So Whitney, how do these disagreements about either the waterways or the competing sovereignty claims, how do these get resolved? Is there a legal process? Is it through diplomacy? How do we solve these questions?
Well, it's a wonderful question, Christine, and I think it cuts the core. There are almost 3 different baskets of questions. On the one hand, you've got the core sovereignty ones about territory and ownership. Hans Island, the Beaufort Sea that Tom referred to. These are going to be dealt with bilaterally between Canada, Kingdom of Denmark, and Greenland, Canada, and the United States. When you're looking at the extended continental shelf, so our rights not to all the waters in the central Arctic Ocean, just to resources that may exist on the seabed or under the seabed beyond our 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, so far away from our coast, where there's those overlaps with Denmark, the United States, and the Russian Federation. Those are scripted through a process through the United Nations and a commission on the limits of the continental shelf. So we submit our scientific data as we've done, and eventually we'll sit down and negotiate that out. what I love to remind people is it's in the best interest of all of the Arctic states for us to all claim as much of that continental shelf as we can.
Whitney,
so that
we
can
have to go
separate
to
it out.
commercial break, but I'm going to let you finish when we come back from this message.